This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
Thank you, the panel. Team Negators come on board and they say they have failed to analyze the meaning of the word energy security we are giving them. But they fail to understand that they have just used different words to understand the meaning of our words that we have used as the meaning. So the criteria behind this meaning is the same criteria behind their meaning. So panel, I'll come and first judge what their first speaker said. She has said they are going to advocate for privatization of these private companies of oil and gas sector. They are going to, that their case will bring global cooperation of these private companies and the countries operating in the private companies. Then they are talking about competition. The government will neglect the competition of this oil and gas. But to bring you under one umbrella, if you have to look in this oil and gas sector, the privatization they're talking about, these are companies operating in different countries, yet they are taking profits back to their country, just not investing them back in that same country they have removed oil from. That's the first thing they have failed to not realize in such a motion. Then panel, we have already told them that some countries have already nationalized their oil, they have already nationalized their oil and they are gaining much in it. That's why we have the idea, we as the International Energy Agency, for every country to manage its own oil and gas in order to be independent. Then panel, they come up with things that like government will not get competition if they don't engage in the private sector companies. But if you realize where the government gets competition is when their people are in need or when the citizens are in need. I'm sure indeed the government will get competition when they feel like their people need this oil and gas, and in fight of global warming and in fight of climate change, these people will need to have that competition and put down the burning of charcoal and put down the use of other sources that are emitting the environment, as my first speaker has told you. So that's why the government will have that competition to protect its environment and use the oil and gas. So they come up with things. Where will the government get the advanced technology we are talking about, or as they are bringing it in their first speech? Pano, we believe that technology you're talking about right now, every government the status quo has reached a criteria of providing to itself the technology we are having. Even the current status quo, most of the countries right now have the materials to mine their oil, have the materials to protect their energy sources, have the materials to protect their gas. But the only criteria is the private companies which are being owned in these states are the people taking out the income. Then panel will bring up something. They are talking about again of technology. In my first speech, you came to realize that our first speaker told you, even though you're talking about of technology, we shall buy up these private companies, or we shall advise the governments to buy these private companies and then use the same materials they have been using, use the same workers they have been using. That's the thing they are failing to analyze. Then panel, to explain to you, we tell you that what are we achieving in our case? We are advocating for energy security of these countries. We want these countries to have full control of their resources. We have these countries to have full power to control how their oil and gas circulates around the globe. So instead of being private sector companies gaining income and paying no taxes in the countries and investing their money outside. Then Pano, we told you that strategic plan and investment shall also appear after putting this into place. The money shall be collected by these countries, or after these countries nationalizing their oil and gas sector. The money shall be collected. They can be able to distribute it in different sectors. They can say, since you are collecting 800 trillion annually, let's take some 2 trillion to the education sector in order to contribute on the research that we've been making on this oil and gas sector, in order to contribute on the people. Allow me rest, Mikey. Thank you, panel.
Thank you so much, Pano Kugonza Kochida from side opposition negators as the second speaker. So Pano, to just begin with a simple analogy. We deal with malaria caused by mosquitoes, not by simply spraying them, but by dealing with a major cause, and that is the habitat. First of all, by slashing, second, by emptying stagnant waters. So what does our proposition come and tell us tonight? We come and see that their major issue is promoting energy security. But even in their very case, the issues that actually what energy security entails, those are called the 4 A's, just like they came and said the research where they got it from the IEA. Energy security entails the 4 A's, which is affordability, accessibility, availability, and acceptability. And then in this very case, Chair, what do they have to say? From their point when They come and tell us how the government is actually going to go ahead and buy these companies and then bringing them into this. But in their current status quo, or in their very parameter where they have the whole world as the parameter, in the whole world we have things like developing countries, of which these developing countries, in order for them to go ahead and actually buy these companies, what is going to happen? They are going to go on and tax the people, inflicting pain onto the people in order to get the money out of them, for them to actually go ahead and buy these companies. Secondly, dear Chair, we look at the acceptability. How many countries or how many private companies in the world are going to be able to accept to give their things into the government? Okay, let us say, okay, actually they have actually given into them. That will actually bring discontent in the citizens of the country, meaning that in this very case, that's like I told you about the 4 A's, it's actually not going to work out. Secondly, dear Chair, they talked about how these foreign companies come into the country after them rejected. After them coming to the company, they actually bring in this, after they've gotten the profits, they take back the profits to their country. In response to that very, in reference or refutation to that very point, Chair, you're going to find that even after these men have actually come and invested into our country, what is going to happen is going to actually bring in global coherency. Secondly, even after these people have actually gotten profits, the profits are going to come back into the same country, despite of the fact that America has a gas company into Uganda. That's not going to take away the revenue of Uganda, because at the end of the day, the government of Uganda is going to tax that company. So at the end of the day, that point actually does not stand in this case. Secondly, I would also like to just hint simple things on the advantages of our case tonight of privatization. There's going to be our resources and efficient use of resources, and then it's going to facilitate healthy competition. And in this case, Chair, we're not going to have anything like political interference in their case, just like the way the government is actually going to come in. And when the government comes in, you're going to find that there's going to be conniving of different political parties, because we believe now in a country like Uganda, it's a democratic country, a multi-party country. We are going to have different parties voting for something else in this very nationalization policy that they front to us tonight. Secondly, Chair, we actually choose to ask them a simple question. Yes, they're actually fronting the issue of nationalization without actually fronting the problems that are causing them to actually go for nationalization in pursuit for energy security. Secondly, we would like to simply ask them a simple question. We are having countries when corruption is actually at the peak, for example, in Uganda. When corruption is actually at the peak, what assurance do they give us tonight that in case this government actually ends up nationalizing, this government actually shall not go on and embezzle the funds that are supposed to be invested in these particular companies where they're going to work in? If a gas and oil company has been nationalized in a very, very corrupt government, what alternative do they have to give us? At the end of the day, we are going to see that even if the company has actually been nationalized, we are going to have issues of corruption where there's not going to be accountability. Even when they come and front the case of privatization, emissions of carbons and all that, that actually does not change that actually in their case actually does not solve the problems of carbon emissions, because at the end of the day, even when the government is done that is actually owning these companies, carbon emissions are going to happen. If the company the pollution of the environment is still going to happen, so that also does not stand in their case. And then secondly, they actually do not tell in their work plan, they do not tell us who's actually going to fund them. Yes, they talk about the whole world, but in their case, there's no funding. So actually, that actually brings down their case and all that, Chair. And then just like I told you, Chair, that this money is actually going to come back because these companies are still going to be taxed. I beg to rest.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.